In this short video, I want to bombard you with just numbers about the brain that really show how cool and, more importantly, how complex our brains are. This is just a broad overview, but hopefully it motivates you to research some of these claims in more detail. First, the brain is 3 pounds, so that's how much the typical brain weighs. Only 3 pounds of gelatinous mass is responsible for all human intelligence, social networks, societies, infrastructure, and technology. The computational powers of the brain are just remarkable given that they only weigh 3 pounds. In total, recent estimates show that there are about 86 billion neurons in the brain. Here's that B word I keep throwing out, and it's a massive number. 86 million seconds ago was about 2.5 to 3 years ago. 86 billion seconds ago was over 2,000 years ago. So just let that sink in. 86 billion neurons in the human brain. Each individual neuron can make about 10 to 15,000 connections to other neurons. It's been estimated that if you add up all of the different permutations or states of the brain, considering just different permutations and connections between all of those neurons, it vastly exceeds the number of stars and actually particles in the Milky Way galaxy. In terms of the structure of the brain, the gray matter of the brain, outlined in red here, and the cerebral cortex is around 4 millimeters thick. That's just like a stack of 4 or so credit cards. This thin cortex is responsible for the vast majority of information processing that goes on in our brain. As you may have noticed, the brain has a lot of wrinkles. We would say it's highly convoluted. These are all of the folds in the brain that we see. The outermost bumps are called gyri, singular is gyrus, and the valleys between the different gyri are called sulci. Some people say sulci, but I think it's pronounced sulci. And it's sulcus for short, or for the singular version. But if we flatten out the brain with an iron, we would see it's actually quite large, about the size of an unfolded newspaper. There are a lot of capillaries in the brain. So these are the very fine, thin branches of the blood vessels in the brain. And if you took them and laid them out end to end, it would total up to be about 400 miles. And that's roughly the distance from St. Louis, Missouri to Ohio. Even crazier than that, there are about 100,000 miles of axons in the brain. We'll talk about axons more in depth next week, but essentially they help to conduct neural impulses away from the cell body toward the end of the cell. So if you took all of the axons and laid them side by side, it would be enough to circle the entire Earth 4 separate times. And just all of that just fits between your 2 ears. The brain is also very computationally active. It calculates 10 to the 16th calculations every single second. That's 10 quadrillion computations every second. That number is so large, it's just pretty much utterly incomprehensible, so we'll just leave that one there. The brain is just this amazing organ, but it's also very costly. The brain is about 2% of the body's total mass, but it disproportionately takes up about 20% of the body's oxygen resources. So all of this computation definitely comes at a cost. A couple of last facts. Neural impulses travel at about 220 miles per hour. So that's about the speed you go at a NASCAR track if you're a driver. Another cool fact is that there are 0 pain receptors in the brain. Because of that, brain surgery is often done when the patient is awake. Here you can see a picture of a guitarist in the middle of brain surgery. The neurosurgeon wanted to make sure he didn't damage the part of the brain responsible for hand movements. So during surgery, the patient played guitar while the surgeon probed or prodded in his brain. And when he hit part of the motor cortex responsible for those hand movements, or when the guitarist was interrupted from playing, the surgeon knew to avoid that area. That wraps up our statistics about the brain from this short video. I'll end with a quote from a comedian. I used to think the brain was the most responsible or wonderful organ in my body. Then I realized who was telling me this. So it just goes to show who's the boss in all of this. Here's another book alert. This one is a textbook, so it's just to be upfront about it. It covers some great topics just in real depth, real extensive reviews. It's called Biological Psychology, an Introduction to Behavioral, Cognitive, and Clinical Neuroscience. So throughout this course, if you find all this stuff pretty interesting, it's a great textbook at the undergraduate level for you to go and buy and read through. And that wraps up this video.